6 months ago, you could open ChatGPT, ask it anything, and get long, detailed back-and-forth answers. For free, no strings attached. Try that today. You'll get a handful of replies and then a wall. A message that says you've hit your limit. Or worse, you won't even get a message. The answers will just get shorter, dumber, slower, and you won't know why. Here's the thing nobody at OpenAI is putting in a headline. Free ChatGPT isn't gone, but it's being quietly hollowed out, one small change at a time. No press release, no dramatic announcement, just a slow squeeze that most users haven't even noticed yet. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly what's changed, why it's happening, what it looks like compared to the rest of the industry, and what it means for the next 12 months, whether you're a casual user or you've built your workflow around a free account. Let's get into it. Let's start with a little bit of history, because it matters for understanding just how far things have shifted. When ChatGPT first exploded onto the scene, the free version was, by any measure, generous. It wasn't a stripped-down taste of the product, it basically was the product. Millions of people got their first real experience of a large language model through that free tier, with very few restrictions standing in the way. That generosity wasn't an accident. It was strategy. Every free user was a habit being formed and a future advocate telling their friends to try it too. Growth was the entire game, and the free tier was the engine driving it. That era is over. And it didn't end with an announcement. It ended the way these things usually do, with a long series of small adjustments that only add up to something significant when you zoom out. Let's start with the most obvious change, the one people actually feel. For a long time, the free tier's limits were loose enough that most casual users never hit them. You could have a real conversation, ask follow-up questions, go back and forth for a while. That's not the case anymore. Free users are now capped at roughly 10 messages every 5 hours before the system quietly switches you over to a smaller, weaker model, one that struggles with longer documents, harder reasoning, and multi-step tasks. You might not even notice the switch happened. The interface doesn't always tell you. You just start getting answers that feel a little off, shorter, less careful, more generic. And here's the part that really shows the direction things are heading. Users who opt out of personalized ads are reportedly getting hit with an even smaller cap, as low as 5 messages every 3 hours. Think about what that means for a second. Protecting your privacy is now indirectly being priced, not with a dollar amount, with your patience. None of this was announced with a blog post titled, "We're cutting your free limits." It just happened. People noticed because they compared notes in forums and support threads, not because OpenAI told them. That's the pattern to watch throughout this whole video. Nothing is stated outright. It's discovered. And it's worth pointing out how these limits actually work, because it's not as simple as 10 messages a day. These are rolling windows, not fixed daily resets, so the system is constantly recalculating how much you've used over the last several hours. That makes it genuinely hard to predict when you'll hit the wall. Some users have even reported the cap tightening during peak evening hours and loosening slightly overnight. Whether that's confirmed policy or just an effect of load balancing, the experience is the same either way, unpredictable and quietly shrinking. Here's the second shift, and this one's bigger than it sounds. Starting in February of 2026, free users in the United States began seeing sponsored results at the bottom of some ChatGPT answers. They're labeled, they're kept visually separate from the actual response, and OpenAI has said the ads themselves don't influence what the model tells you. But step back and think about what this actually represents. For years, the entire pitch of free ChatGPT was simple. It's free because OpenAI is investing in growth, in adoption, in getting as many people as possible hooked on AI before monetizing seriously. Ads change that equation completely. Free is no longer just a growth strategy. It's now a business model with its own revenue line. Which means the free tier isn't a loss leader anymore. It's an asset that needs to justify its own server costs. And once a company starts thinking about a free product that way, the incentives shift. Every free user becomes a cost to manage instead of a future customer to nurture. That mindset shift is usually where the real cuts begin. It's also worth noting where this rolled out first. The United States got ads before anywhere else, which suggests a controlled experiment ahead of a wider rollout. Companies don't test monetization changes on their biggest market unless they're confident enough to expand it. So expect that ad placement to widen to more countries and more prominent positioning over time. This next one is subtle, and it's honestly the most important part of the whole story. When free users hit their cap, they're not just locked out. In most cases, they get quietly switched to a smaller, cheaper model, a mini version that's faster and less resource-intensive to run, but noticeably worse at anything complex. Multi-step reasoning, long documents, nuanced writing, all of it takes a hit. The tricky part is that this switch often isn't clearly flagged. Some users only realize it happened when they notice the tone of the answers has changed, or the model starts making mistakes it wouldn't have made minutes earlier. There's no big red banner that says, "You are now talking to a downgraded version of this product." You're expected to notice on your own, or not notice at all. Why does this matter so much? Because it means the free ChatGPT experience isn't one consistent product anymore. It's a moving target. What you get depends on the time of day, how much you've already used, server load, and apparently whether you've opted into ads. Two free users sitting next to each other could be having completely different experiences with what looks, on the surface, like the same app. That inconsistency is in itself a form of disappearing. The free product isn't one thing you can rely on. It's a shifting floor. Now let's talk about features, because this is where the gap between free and paid has widened the most. Every major capability OpenAI has rolled out over the last year has landed behind a subscription, not in front of it. Deep, multi-step research tools, advanced image and video generation, longer memory and context windows, agent-style tools that can complete tasks on their own. None of it reaches free users at launch, and in most cases, it never fully reaches them at all. This is a familiar playbook if you've watched other tech products evolve. The free tier becomes a permanent demo of last year's capability, frozen in place, while the real product, the one actually worth talking about, lives entirely on the other side of a paywall. It's not that OpenAI owes anyone a free flagship model. Businesses are allowed to charge for their best work, but it's worth being clear-eyed about what free ChatGPT now actually means. Not a scaled-down version of the current product, but a permanently aging one. The gap between what free users get and what paying users get isn't stable. It's compounding, month after month. Now, it's worth asking, is this just an OpenAI problem, or is this happening everywhere? Look across the industry, and you'll see the same shape, even if the details differ. Every major AI lab is under the same financial pressure. Massive compute costs, and investors who are done accepting "we'll figure out monetization later" as an answer. Free tiers across the board have been getting tighter, not looser. The newest, most capable models launch behind a paywall first, and trickle down to free users later, if at all. That doesn't excuse what's happening with ChatGPT specifically, but it explains why this isn't a random, isolated decision. It's an industry-wide correction happening at roughly the same time, because every one of these companies is staring at the same balance sheet problem. So why now? Why this slow squeeze instead of just announcing a change outright? Running these models is expensive, genuinely significantly expensive, and that cost scales with every single free conversation, every image generated, every long document analyzed. For years, that cost was treated as an acceptable price for growth. Get as many people as possible using the product, build habit, build brand recognition, and worry about monetization later. But later has arrived. The AI industry is now in a phase where investors and leadership are asking pointed questions about margins, not just market share. And the fastest way to fix a margin problem without triggering backlash is exactly what we've been describing. Don't cut the free tier all at once. Trim it quietly. Tighten a limit here. Add an ad placement there. Route heavy users to a cheaper model behind the scenes. Each change is small enough to avoid a headline, but the cumulative effect over 6 or 12 months is a completely different product than the one people signed up for. This isn't unique to OpenAI, by the way. It's the same playbook streaming services used when they started cracking down on password sharing, and the same one social platforms use when organic reach quietly started dying years ago. Free products don't usually disappear with an announcement. They disappear with 1,000 small adjustments that are individually too minor to complain about. There's a pattern to this kind of change that's worth naming directly, because once you see it, you'll notice it everywhere. It's sometimes called the boiling frog approach to monetization. No single update is big enough to make headlines or spark mass cancellations. A slightly lower message cap here, a slightly smaller model swapped in during peak hours there, an ad placement that starts small and quiet. Individually, each change is easy to shrug off. But stack 10 or 20 of them across a year, and you've fundamentally changed the product without ever having to defend that decision publicly. Because there was never one single decision to defend, just a long trail of small ones. So what do you actually do with this information? First, don't assume the free version you used 6 months ago is the free version you're using today. Check current limits before you build any real workflow around a free account, especially if you rely on it for work or school. Second, if ChatGPT feels noticeably worse lately, you're probably not imagining it. There's a real chance you've been quietly shifted to a smaller model without being told. Third, if you're relying on a free AI tool for anything that actually matters, it's worth building in some redundancy. Don't put all of your workflow behind one free product that could tighten its limits again next month without warning. Know what your backup option is before you need it, not after you've already hit a wall in the middle of something important. And finally, this trend is worth watching across every AI tool, not just this one. As the free-to-paid gap widens industry-wide, the real question isn't, is this tool free? It's how long will it stay usable enough to matter? That's a very different question, and it's the one worth asking before you depend on any free AI product for something important. Free ChatGPT isn't dead, but it's not what it used to be, and it's not going to stay what it is today either. The direction is clear, even if the announcements never are. And once you know what to look for, you'll start noticing this same pattern everywhere, not just here.